This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Well, welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. We're excited to be with you today. We've got a really good episode in store for you. We've got an awesome person on that's an expert in business and helps a lot of people all over the country with different aspects of business. So what are we talking about today? Today, we're talking about escaping the daily grind. Well, who in the world wouldn't want that, right? We all as business people get caught up in the day-to-day and the grind and the meetings and the deals and the people coming and going. Today, we're talking about how to escape the daily grind and turn your business into a freedom machine. That sounds awesome. I know everybody wants more freedom. Everybody wants more autonomy. Everybody wants to kind of be let loose of the grips of business, because sometimes the business feels like it owns us, versus us owning it. And so today we're going to be kind of diving into that with somebody who is an amazing person and is going to guide us through some of the best practices. She literally has written the book. I should say books. She's written multiple books on this topic, and I think you're going to get a lot of value out of it. So let me introduce Leslie Hassler. Leslie is the owner and CEO of a company called Biz Rules, which is a business consulting and fractional CFO firm that helps companies grow, scale, and becoming freedom-generating machines. In addition to being an entrepreneur, she's also a keynote speaker and author of 2 books. One of them is titled First This, Then That. The second one is titled Scaling Rich. Leslie, without further ado, welcome to the show.
Howdy, Jason. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
No, we're excited to have you. And so tell us a little bit about you and kind of how you got to where you are today doing the things that you're doing.
Well, it's been a journey like everyone, right? I first started as an entrepreneur well over 17 years ago, a bit of an accidental entrepreneur, which just means that I found out on Wednesday I wasn't going to have a job on Monday. And I thought it'd be a great idea to open up a business. And that was well back in 2007. So it's been, we've gone around the world a couple of times. A lot of people ask me, like, how did you learn what you needed to know to be here? And I was like, easy. I have an MBA from the School of Hard Knocks, and I failed a few classes and had to take them multiple times. But I think that's what entrepreneurship is, because even if you get a degree in entrepreneurship, you're just learning the theory, maybe the strategy. Perhaps you have a little more information. But once you get into business, man, it's the wild, wild west. Every day is something new. You will never grow as much as a person as you do as an entrepreneur. And I just come to you with a lot of experience with that, both in my own entrepreneurial experience, but with working with so many different kinds of businesses and seeing that the journey actually is really similar. And we need to do a better job about talking about it so that everyone can grow quicker, more profitably, with more freedom together.
Yeah. No, I love that. How long have you been doing this? How long have you been an entrepreneur, business owner?
So, entrepreneur for 17 years. Your Biz Rules is about a little over a decade old. So we've been here and around for a while. So my first business was something a little different, but it very important for my journey. It just kind of sucked my soul dry. I like to tell people my first business was my prison. My second business is my playground. So I fixed a lot of things in the process. Like when I say I've done it, I really, if you're going through something you're not enjoying right now, chances are I have a similar experience, But yeah, so been around the block a time or two.
Yeah. I think we've all had jobs or, been in situations professionally where it just wasn't a good fit or just we just kind of grew out of it and it just got old or, tiring. We aren't having fun with it. And I think that's the spirit of an entrepreneur right there is you can recognize where you're at and pivot. And it's okay to make a pivot. It's okay to change. I think a lot of people in life get nervous or scared to make a change. You're like, well, to gain something, sometimes you have to give up something, right? And that giving up of a guaranteed paycheck or guaranteed benefits and all of those things scares people, and they don't make a change. They don't trust their instincts. They don't follow a heart or don't follow an opportunity that's presented because they're afraid of the unknown or whatever. So I think that's great. And so what made you go into business consulting and fractional CFO work and kind of helping people from those angles? Of all the things, you've been an entrepreneur, you probably do a number of different things. Why'd you choose those two things?
Well, so when I was transitioning out of the first business, I was going around going, okay, God, if this isn't it, what is it? What is it? And so I really had to get clear with what I enjoyed about my company, what I didn't enjoy about my company, what would bring me joy, what did not bring me joy. And what it came down to is I love business. I am a puzzle. I like it's a big puzzle to me. I can see the gears that aren't working. Like I walk into a Starbucks, I'm counting how many chairs are in the table, how often are they selling a cup of coffee, and I'm going everybody's coffee looks about it big. So if I'm like that's just my brain walking in the door, right? And I just kind of ease or ooze that in a lot of ways. We tell our clients, I'm like, look, I'll be the business geek. I'll read all the books so you don't have to. And then I'll bring the best to you because it's just how I eat and breathe and do that. So when I recognized that, the question was, well, okay, then what? What is it that I do next with this? And at the time, it didn't make sense for me to be a serial entrepreneur. I had young kids, different values, different priorities at that point in time. And so I was like, okay, there's this. And I will tell you, I came into it kicking and screaming. I was like, who am I? Why should I be doing this? The whole things that we think of. And I finally took the nudge and I said, great, I'll take on 3 clients for free for 3 months, 3 different clients for 3 months. That was the thing. And I just wanted to see and prove to myself that I had the capability. And then I get in there and I was like, oh, I actually do have the capability to be excellent at this. Those 3 clients taught me a whole lot. And then it's just, I never looked back. I never, I never questioned being this or doing this. I think it's so aligned with who I am. And you're talking about, that whole jump from a corporate job, and in my brain, I heard alignment. And I think really alignment is so key to business success. It is what will make one person's business falter and another person's business soar. And so it's not necessarily something that you're hearing people talk about around a networking event or at a conference is that alignment. And that's what a lot of the breaking free from the grind is about finding the alignment and getting your business to work with it versus against it.
Working with it versus against it. Boy, that's a novel idea. I see so many people fighting it and working against it, because they want to do it their way. It's about control or a lack of unknowns or fears or just different things that contribute to that. Um, as a business consultant, doing all the things that you do with people, what are you seeing or kind of top trends? What are the common types of things that stand out in these businesses that, kind of get them in this situation where they're having some issues or, as you're saying, not in alignment?
Yeah, I think one of the really easy things for business owners is to follow the industry norm, whatever that industry norm is, the expectation. Oftentimes, I remember the story. I know you've probably heard this before, where a woman puts a ham into the oven and she's cut it in half, and her husband's like, "Why are you doing that?" And she's like, "I don't know. My mom did it." Calls mom. Mom's like, "I don't know. Grandma did it." And grandma's like, "What are you kidding? My first stove, it was so small, the full ham wouldn't fit in." right? Is that that's to me what industry following industry standard is. It's just meaning you're doing something, but you're not necessarily questioning, is this right for me? Is this right for my goals? Is this right for the state of the world at the moment? Or is it just simply the easiest thing to do because you don't know what else to do? And so the industry norms, if you're following industry norm for pricing, that means you're assuming people are profitable. Let me tell you, they're not really. If you're following the industry norm of what success looks like or what a business looks like, guess what? It's probably not going to work for you because it's not necessarily aligned to who you are, who you serve, how you do the work, and where what your vision is. What's that long-term legacy that you're building with this business that you're creating? Because to me, business is creation. You mentioned creativity earlier. It is that opportunity that we have to be the ultimate creator and to have impact and to create goodness in the world and do good work for good people. You can't you can't follow somebody else's recipe for this and expect it to work. You've got to bring alignment into it. And so us, it's the head and the heart, and then what the feet and the hands are doing. So, what's your heart saying? Why are you doing what you're doing? What's the vision, the mission, the values, those kinds of things, the soul of your business? It's the goals and the strategy, your how are you getting this done, all the way down to the action that you take. When all of those things are in alignment, it produces ease. When you have contrast or working against each other, you get that clunkiness and everything's so hard, right? And that's just a really good indicator that if it's hard, it likely is out of alignment. And there's an easier, simpler way to get success and to be successful and get results than maybe following what everybody else is doing.
So why do people follow what everybody else is doing? If it feels hard and they're like, yeah, this is hard, there's got to be a simpler way, but I'm just going to follow what everybody else is doing in my industry because I was at an association meeting and everybody talked about this being the best way to do things, even though that may not be the best way. But if they don't know that, they just follow the crowd. Why do people do that? Why do they keep subjecting themselves to that?
I think you touched on it, right? They don't know any better. And hey, I didn't know any better when I first started out. And I definitely did things like price myself to my competition. Quickly learned that was not going to cut it. But I think the second part of that is being brave enough to be different enough. It's like it is amount of bravery to be different and to not worry about that difference. I do think it takes sometimes time in business. When you've got another business owner that says, "Man, you're just crazy. I don't know why you would do X, Y, and Z," and you can't stand there with confidence and say, "Totally get it, but it works for me. Thanks." And being able to have confidence in why you're choosing what you're choosing. Um, I think also people look externally for external acceptance and approval, and validation. And while I will tell you, I'm here for the applause. I appreciate the applause, right? There's still a certain part of this where I'm like, that's phenomenal. Thank you for your input. This works. I'm okay with this. And this is why this works. And this is why that wouldn't work for me. But it's taken, the 17 years of being in business to have gone through it, to do the changes and the shifts and the contemplation to know exactly why what works for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Even as a business coach and executive coach myself, I'm out there. I know a lot of coaches. I met a lot of coaches, and everybody's different. Now, there are some commonalities in the coaching business of how coaches and consultants, engage people, problems they deal with. There's a lot of touch points and similarities there. But I know coaches that only do group coaching. They'll schedule 5 people in a group and they'll you know, put ten of those groups together and charge X amount of money. And they're group coaches. Some people, focus on a particular industry, medical or manufacturing or retail or IT or, whatever. Some people will only, they do more assessments and individual assessments or audits of companies, right? And then they do kind of do some coaching around that, right? Some people are more public speakers, they go to events and they'll speak, and then they'll kind of coach people a little bit, in between their coaching gigs. Like everybody's different and connects different ways, but you got to find out what's good for you. What do you want to do? Do you want to book your schedule all day, every day, doing the same thing a certain way? Some people like that, some people don't. What kind of a coach do you want to be? So if you're out there in business, whether regardless of industry, right? Being different is not bad as long as what you're doing is legal, moral, and ethical, and it's working and it's allowing you to be profitable. You're allowing to, improve your performance and productivity and your ways that you measure yourself, your revenue, your cash flow, and all of those things are leading in positive directions, and you're continuously growing and evolving in a productive manner where you're not breaking things and causing problems, then that works, right? And I think individuality, that also is your differentiators. That's what makes you different than your competitors and better than your competitors. So being different is great, but you also, I would imagine, don't want to go off the deep end and be this renegade that's this one-off person, running so fast you don't even see the cliff coming up and you're about to run off the cliff, right?
Yeah. I love that you bring that up because it is a great parable to how different businesses can be. We know for ourselves that, part of the reason we say we're the fractional C-suite before you can hire the C-suite is we like to work across the entirety of the business. We like to get our hands dirty. Like I tell people, one problem is never really one problem. It's usually four different aspects of the business. And that's why we're not specialists in that way. It's like we like the generality of it, but it's been a lot of intentional self-discovery and intentional work on communicating that to other people, which is why we can say how we're different. And the how we're different aspect for any business owner is such a key part of your CVP, your client value proposition, to being able to help people choose you over somebody else, or in some cases choose not to work for you. If I'm like, love me, hate me, but just don't be in the middle. Like the middle is friend zone, right? And friend zone doesn't build business. But love me or hate me, that's my goal. And so if you love me, then you'll work with me. If you hate me, then maybe there's somebody else that's a better fit. And I'm okay with that because there's enough to go around, right? But it is that I can listen to anybody that has that story that says, I'm the specialist, I only work X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, phenomenal, congratulations. But it would never work for me. And it doesn't bother me that they do whatever they do because I enjoy what I do so much. So it's an important place to get to, I think, as an entrepreneur, is this place of not only confidence, but peace when it comes to knowing what it is that you do, why you do it, why it's in alignment, why whatever anybody else is doing, you're like, yeah, that's a shiny object, not chasing that puppy. Thanks. Right? And why it works or doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah, not chasing everything and not trying to please everybody, be disciplined to what you're the best at. Attract the right kind of people that want that want to be connected to that, want to gain value from that. And I think you'll go a lot farther. And so I wanted to, kind of getting into some of your books and some of the things that you've got in there. People get into business and they evolve and they get in this daily grind. The main, kind of focus here is the daily grind and how do we get in the daily grind. And I think we get into the grind of doing things because just the nature of business, the phone rings, the emails come in, you got to deal with, supplies and ordering things and delivering things on time and answering the phone and, all the day-to-day tasks which create the grind. But there's a point that when you're in the grind for a while, you kind of hit some barriers, right? There's only so much you can do doing things the way you're doing it. And so we're talking about barriers, right? Everybody hits a barrier. Question is, how do you know you've hit the barrier? And then what are some things that you do to help people start getting over that barrier?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. This is such the concept of scaling rich. And we tell it through the story of Josh, the entrepreneur. And while I was smiling while you were listing everything off, I'm like, yep, that's what Josh was going through. It is that experience. And so the barriers that you can come up against, they're going to have a multitude of things. I think one is the identity of the business owner. So let me explain. And I say identity as kind of this big bucket, but it's multifaceted. I see business owners, especially people who've had a level of success, when they're in this kind of constant grind. There's a certain part of their personality or their identity that derives value from being the one to do all the work. And so, since value and work are so closely tied, it's really hard to stop the grind. And there's this concept of effort, in Scaling Rich, Josh's story, similar to a lot of people, he's built a business, he's running into frustrations. He left corporate because he got passed over for a promotion. And he came into his company going, this is all I'm going to show everybody how good I really am. Right? That's the internal subconscious conversation that's going on. I'm going to be successful through my sheer effort. But the problem is that that focus on effort, negates results. Effort doesn't always equal. We say there's really busyness is not a good business. It's just motion. It's a hamster wheel going around and around and around and around. And then when you've been there long enough and everything's focused on you, you can't even imagine stopping, because if you stopped, it stopped. If it stopped, it fails, and that's unacceptable. And now you're so locked into it that you're scared to stop, because then you've sacrificed all this stuff, and what would you have to show for it? And you're scared that you get, it's a vicious little cycle. So I think that's the first breakthrough to go into, is understanding, what is the work giving you? Is it giving you a sense of value? Is it creating freedom? Is it allowing you to evolve as the owner? So even E-Myth, talks about going from the technician to the manager to da da da, right? It's the same kind of thing we're talking about here. Are you still stuck as the worker? Even if you have team, you can still be stuck as the worker. You've never evolved to becoming a manager. A manager is different than a leader, and a leader is different than a CEO, right? There's these levels of evolution that you keep going, and each part of that is a barrier. Each transition is a barrier that you have to be able to break through. So I think in some cases, one of the things that we're looking at is, one of the very first thing we ask everybody that comes in, we're like, what's the big picture? What are we building? Why? What does it mean in terms of dollars? What does it mean in terms of your life? What does it mean in terms of your future? And sometimes people have lost the vision. They've lost the dream because they've been locked into the grind so long. And we'll have people are like, I just want a better quality of life, but I don't know what that means. We're like, phenomenal. We'll figure that out together. But at least we know what we're headed to. Right? We know what we're trying to fix. And then it'll be certain things. I'm like, so what did we're talking, you're like, so did you enjoy taking out the trash? They're like, well, no, but it needs to be done. I was like, yeah, but did it improve your quality of life? And people are like, well, no. I'm like, that's interesting, isn't it? Did it fill you up or did it drain you down? That's a really quick and easy exercise you can do when you're looking at what you're doing. You're like, is this draining me like a vampire, sucking it from me? Or does it give me excitement? Does it give me energy? Because if you're in that state of energy and flow, you feel better, right? And it feels like a better quality of life. So that's just one kind of instance to where identity really is the barrier that you will consistently have to work on. I still work on it. Every time we're going to up level the business, I have to up level myself. And I'm not surprised by it, but some days I'm taken back by what it is that's actually standing in my way.
Yeah. Sometimes those things you don't even realize some of those things are going on. You're just, busy being busy, doing your thing, and it's working, but you don't realize that, whether it's a self-limiting thought or you're spending too much time on things that's not big enough picture, or you're not, developing your leadership, your communication skills, you're not getting out in front of enough people and engaged in different ways. There's a lot of different ways you level up and what have you, but recognizing where you are in that journey is critical, right? Self-reflection there is critical. How do you know where to go next to achieve some end state that you said was important to you to achieve? Making $1 million, or living a certain kind of life, or having 14 houses on the beach, or whatever that may be for you. How how are you going to go somewhere and get to an end state if you don't even know where you are today on that roadmap, right? I think that's critical. And I think people self sabotage because you mentioned it in this process where they are kind of that linchpin in the middle of things, because people come to them asking them questions. They are the continuity of the business. They've been there. You know, they created it. They've been there longer than anybody else, right? They were the number one employee, right? And so they have knowledge. They have skill sets that they've acquired, and there's a lot of value. There's a lot of feel good out of people coming to you asking you questions all the time because you're the expert, right? And you know things other people don't know, and then you're in the middle of all these things, and you feel important. You feel like you're the boss, and I feel valued. I feel like people are looking up to me, and that makes people feel good, right? But the challenge is you're actually the single source of failure, right? And with being a single source of failure, um, is a risk to you. If you're the single source of failure in your company, then you've got to figure out how to let go of that control, because this is really about control. I have created something that is pretty good. I feel good about it. I'm making some money at it. I've proven that it can be done. And my old crappy boss at the corporation's probably eating his crow right now because I'm being successful. But to do anything beyond that means you have to let go of control. And that is really, really hard for some people. How do you get people to recognize that first off and admit that and have accountability there, and then pivot them out of that?
So there's this realization that if everything centers upon you, you'll never be able to scale. You just never will, because you are a finite resource, and like you said, you're the weakest point of failure. Um, Going even back to the identity, when you're shifting from this role of getting the work done or being so heavily involved in the work, you have to start understanding that your role is not that anymore. Your role is to generate a result and to ensure that all the details are covered. Now, that does mean that you likely will have to train people. You will take your time with this. You will do documentation. And if you're not a details person, we gotcha. We understand this, right? But the goal is to get to a point in time to where your team comes and takes things off your plate. And we had a client come in, and when they first started, they had just gone through 100% turnover. Didn't know they were about to go through 100% turnover again on their staff. And they're like, what is up? What's going on? And the truth is that the hires weren't good fits. Is a lot of it. The second part is the owner was mired in doing the work all the time, and because there was so much inconsistency, to your point, control and trust. Not only trust in the people that you're hiring, but also trust in yourself, right? Because it's one thing if you mess up. It's something else if you mess somebody else up, right? There's a different level of accountability there. But I think really what we want to get to is the point for like this one client where, a year after, now it does take a little bit of time, but a year after we installed a brand new team, 4 people hired within 6 months, getting them trained, had all the pieces in place, the good job descriptions, onboarding plans, the whole 9 yards, did the homework. When her team comes in and goes, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Give. I'm taking this and I'm taking this. This is not yours anymore." And walk out the door. And she was just like, "Are you kidding me? You said this would happen one day." And I was like, "Yeah, it does, but it doesn't happen the second day you've hired somebody." So we have to find where these opportunities are. Like, is it our client has a hard time delegating and letting go of control? Has our client put in the systems and processes that will support the delegation and letting go of control? Do we have the right people? It's such a multifaceted, but I always like focusing on a couple of things. One is, where are you the bottleneck? Where are you the one that's behind on everything? Good clue to get you out of that bottleneck. One of our favorite things that we like to get the owners out of is invoicing. We're like, done. Because typically the owner's having this value judgment with each and every invoice. Will they pay it? Will they not pay it? Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Maybe if I discount it, those types of things. Remove the owner, and suddenly it's like, oh, everybody pays, nobody gets a discount, and it's all on time. And you're like, oh, isn't that interesting? So that's one area that we also like to look. But the other part I think of is I'm always thinking about sustainability, and sustainability in the terms of, can we keep this going? Can we make this work long term? And so we'll ask a question. We're like, okay, if we were going to double or triple your business, which we can do in 12 months if your business is ready, what would break? What would collapse? What would turn into an utter catastrophe? The answers to those questions are the things you should focus on next, because you're not ready to grow. You're not ready to scale. You're not ready for exponential. And I think that's why so many people go, I'm going to scale, dun, 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 and then go, it just kind of falls flat. It's because we're not looking at the things that are necessary to make all these aspects of our business successful.
You have to have the right mindset. You have to have the right vision. You have to have an actual plan that has been vetted by the team, together with the team. You've got to get buy-in. You've got to have resources available, funding available potentially, and know what the pitfalls are of the things that'll happen at that next level. If you scale from 10 million to 15 million, you're going to run into different types of challenges, different levels of problems that you're probably not used to dealing with, because if unless you've been at that 15 million, $20 million level, and you have to know that, be prepared for that, so you can incorporate that into your calculus when you're executing that plan and moving the needle, to 11, 12, 13, 14, all the way up to 15 million, where your goal is, right? And so, in your book, Scaling Rich, there's kind of three main focus areas that I'm kind of deriving from your body of work here. When you focus with somebody, how do you know you kind of realize some of these things as you're working through these different stages of things that surround the business?
Yeah, so profitability is the money left over at the end of the day, right? And every business has a different entity, different business model. We like to see our clients at net profitability, especially if you're in a service-based business, being anywhere between 36 and 50% net profit at the end of the day. And to have that be significant enough. Now, I've got some clients to where we do compensation at a net profit. Other clients, we can do compensation as a payroll line item. But either way that it is, you have to have enough. And I think the problem that we have in business, and I think it's prolific, it doesn't matter how many zeros are on your revenue line, is this concept of trying to break even and having that be an acceptable form of business management. And usually when people want to break even, it's because they don't want to pay taxes. And I'm like, well, nobody wants to pay taxes. However, taxes are a privilege of profit. And with the right systems into place, taxes aren't a surprise. We get a lot of people that come to us and they're like, I have a 5-figure, 6-figure tax bill that surprised me. And I was like, that should not happen. You should know what that's coming like every single month and be putting away for it so that it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal to pay your taxes. And that's where I think a lot of times people aren't putting enough purpose to their profits. They're not driving enough profit. They're not keeping an eye on that and being vigilant with it because money likes to grow and flow. And if you don't put intention on it, it's going to do squirrely things. It's going to go into places that you did not want it to go to. Right. And it's really, we don't like any money surprises. So it's about being more strategic in that area and having uncommonly high expectations for what your bottom line looks like. And for us, what we find is the greater the financial stability and security, the better the leader, better the entrepreneur is able to make decisions, to be a leader in the company, to weather storms. And I've seen far too much change in just the last few years. The rate of it is not slowing down, peeps. I hate to tell you, there's no normal because it changes every day. And your business has to have some grounding, some financial base to be able to weather these storms. The businesses that do this work come out of recession stronger. They're able to pick up things like key talent, key acquisitions, take advantage of things because you can risk it. It's safer for you to risk. And that's why I think profitability is so important for us. And it's one of the first things we look at is everything that's going into the profit, everything that's contributing or detracting. How do we maximize it? How do we then put purpose to it so it becomes a tool for something better in the business? The second part was freedom. So again, I'm going to tell you a story of when I got my first puppy. I don't know, I was 25, 26. My husband and I, we got 2 puppies on one weekend. What were we thinking? Anyways, so we got a Great Dane and a yellow lab, not small dogs. Now my husband's 6'4". His dream was the Great Dane. He's a big guy, wanted a big dog. But I remember holding the puppy in my lap, right? And my neighbor, who a dog person, had always had dog. She was like, I don't want to tell you how to raise your dog. I'm not trying to do that, but I got to ask you a question. When that dog's 150 pounds, do you want them to be doing this? And I was like, oh no. And I picked the puppy up and I put it on the ground. I never put the dog in my lap again because I was like, nope, that does not sound like a good idea to me. Right. And that in that way, I was thinking about the future in mind, right? I had an idea of what I did not want, which tells me what I do want, a little bit of going back to vision, but it's the aspect of understanding that it is so much easier for you to have freedom in your business today than for you to treat it as a reward that sometime magically will happen. Because if I wanted the freedom not to have a 150-pound dog on my lap, I needed to choose not to have the freedom of a 5-pound dog on my lap. Right. So we sacrifice freedom on the altar of success. But in actuality, you need to be able to bring in freedom every single day. And in Scaling Rich, Josh's really simple thing, we wanted just a really simple thing. He wanted to leave the office at 4. And so many people find that to be really challenging. And we're like, no, it's like, to me, somebody's like, I just wish I could leave the office at 4. And in my brain, I'm like, so shut down your computer at 3:45, pick up your stuff at 3:55, walk out the door. I mean, it truly is that simple. But if you think about all the systems, if you've put yourself in the middle of everything, if everybody's working till 7, like, you've kind of think about the business that you're building to be able to choose the freedom you want, but choose it today, not when you get big enough, because I will let you know, you will never be big enough. That's the thing about entrepreneurs. We set these goals, we get there, and then we go, oh, it's not big enough. We could have done better. Oh, we should have chosen a bigger goal. Like, we totally deflate the act of winning for something better. And that's why tying freedom to being a reward will never be a strategy that will work, because every time you get there, you're going to deflate it, you're going to diminish it, and you're going to choose to delay it. And that's why I think so many people really struggle with getting freedom in their businesses, is they're not designing a business to give them freedom. Legacy, we look at legacy as impact and legacy. Impact is creating change, positive change for people. Legacy is doing it so that it's everlasting, right? So I can create impact, but can my team recreate the same impact? If my team can recreate the same impact, then I start to edge towards legacy. If our good work does it in such a way that we empower our owners to do it again for their team, now we're starting to get everlasting. It's that whole paying it forward. It becomes exponential. It lives on past me as the owner.
That is powerful. Profitability, freedom, and legacy. So, what happens if you're working with folks and you're able to go through this and put the things in place that need to happen to be profitable, to drive their definition of freedom and this impact and legacy they want to leave behind? What changes when that happens and people allow that to happen in their business?
It's pretty monumental. I mean, you'll go from seeing somebody that's maybe lacking confidence, is unsure, has more worries than fun. Um, it's just really trying to make sure they can survive, which is, lower on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, to when they start thinking past themselves and thinking to their team. I know we're moving up the rungs. I know we're making progress. When they can think then past the team, even, and they start thinking about what's 3, 5 years, we know we're doing really well. When the growth becomes a game, we're really doing well. Like I can see this impact, right? It becomes less of a chore and less of a grind, honestly. This is probably the last bit of this, is that the grind is also related to how you're being fed by your business. If it starts to become fun, even if maybe you're doing some of the same work, it becomes less of a grind. And so there's this aspect that changes. We have one client that came in. We did a business audit for her, kind of just deep dive into the business, came up with a plan. I said, I think your business can be 4 times bigger, and I think we can do it within the next 12 months. And her response, no, no, no way, ain't gonna happen. I was like, well, what if we just tried? You're not going to be disappointed if we don't make it, are you? And she's like, nope. So we wound up quadrupling her business in 9 months because all the pieces were ready, right? It just needed the right activation. She was like, well, we won't do it again. And I was like, well, you open to just playing and seeing if it happens. She's like, yeah, did it again. Next year, she's like, so do you think we could grow? And I'm like, yeah. What do you want to try for? I'm like, what's the number now? Like, tell me, where are we playing to? And then we did it. And so now we're trying to prove stability. We're going to do it again. Our goal is to do it the same, because there's enough variability in her business. It's not like has this monthly recurring revenue that's being generated. It's kind of like a one and done type of an environment. We're going, how can we play at this multiple 7-figure level again in a highly variable business? And what needs to be put into place to support that? And so I think that's where it stops becoming your prison, the grind, and starts to become your playground. That is the trade off. And that's when you get to do things that are just mind blowing. Maybe you never even dreamt that you would be able to do, and start thinking bigger. So great, you got a $2 million business. What would it look like at a 6? What about at a 10? What about a 60? What would change? And I think when you're doing it for more than just yourself, when that impact and legacy part, right? When you win, your team wins, your family wins, maybe your community wins, maybe you're able to support a charity for their entire yearly budget and you change 100 different people's lives. Why wouldn't you want to do this?
Business is hard. Business is tough. And when you create success, you want to hold on to that. You want to clutch to that. It's like digging your cat claws into the side of it and not letting go. It's like a cat stuck in the tree, they've climbed like, halfway up a tree and then they like, oh my gosh, I'm up pretty high, and they freeze and they kind of lock their claws and they just kind of hang there and they don't know what to do, right? And you could keep climbing to the top, but it gets, farther away from the ground. It gets higher altitude. Um, the air is thinner, things change, things are different at the top, right? It's a little scarier at the top of the tree than it is the bottom of the tree. And people kind of lock in, and then they do things based out of fear. They do things based out of unknowns. They do things for all the reasons that you've described today, right? And that stops everything, right? You just kind of are maintaining what you've built because you figured out how to do that. And you may be able to repetitively do that, but it's really hard. There's a lot of friction there, there's a lot of turnover there. It's a harder wheel to turn and move. It takes more muscle to turn that crank to keep that going. Whereas, as you're describing with freedom here, it's liberating to let go of that. It's liberating to just take the tension and the stress and the frustration of being locked into the side of that tree like a cat, and just kind of relax that and just climb up to the next branch, survey things at that level, figure out what needs to happen to make that happen, talk to experts like you, Leslie, that know how to put those things in place, trust in that, and then climb up to the next level branch, reassess, readjust, and move forward. And, freedom is really what we all want. That's why, people like living in America, right? It's one of the freest, most, democratic, most wonderful countries in the world, because we all have the opportunities to do anything we really want to do in this world, right? We want freedom to be our best, to do things that will really make us happy, things we're passionate about, things that make a difference in the world. So you can have a free life and still be successful if you're able to do what it takes to make that happen. And Leslie, you've done a great job of kind of laying that out. As we kind of depart today, what do you think the top three takeaways are for folks that are maybe in the grind, looking to gain some freedom, to reduce some stress, to, may take a little bit of time off from time to time and take a couple of vacations a year and actually live and enjoy life, do something, fun, and live life with the success they've created?
I think the first part is, I will say, is stop waiting. Wait and see is not a strategic plan. Hope and pray feels good in the moment, but really doesn't deliver the goods. If you know you're on the grind, get off. Like, do the things that need to happen to get off, not waiting for it to improve, because chances are you've built a machine that's going to feed itself on the grind, and you're going to have to take apart the machine you've built piece by piece while it's still operating as a business and bringing in money. Like, don't burn the puppy down. Don't need to do that. Don't get to that point, right? So take action and really start to have a different expectation of your business, of yourself, and of what you're going to get from it at the end. So you can rewrite the rules. That's the great thing about business. You're in charge. You can rewrite the rules. This is your land, your little kingdom. You can do that. It's the freedom that you have to be able to do it. Then I would say get support. There's very few people that are highly successful that do it all by themselves. There is no gold star. There's no Oscar that's going to be awarded to you for doing it all by yourself. In fact, every story of success is about people. It is about team. It is about collaboration. So find the people. Find the people. If my team can help, obviously we're up for that. We live for it. If you know someone, then stop waiting. Just do it. The scariest thing is taking the action, and once you take the action, it all starts to go. And in that way, we're I will say, don't confuse motion with momentum, because it's really going to take momentum to create a transformation. But have good expectations. Profitability is the answer, and yes, I haven't seen a business that can't make the changes to become profitable if you allow it. That's the owner. Usually it is there's some aspects in there, but find somebody that's going to be honest with you and say, "Oh, Jason, I hate to tell you this, but you're sabotaging yourself. And here's how I see it. And here's its impact. And here's how it's out of alignment. Here's what I think you could do. Tell me what you're ready to do."
Yeah, I think I'll kind of rephrase it this way. As a business leader, what are you truly the best at? What are you the most skilled at? What are the God-given skills and abilities that he gave you that he gave you more of than other people? Because everybody's got their strengths and weaknesses. They've got these talents. Find out what you're really truly the best at, and then focus your time on doing those types of things, and let the rest of it be, delegated to the people that they're the best at doing those other things. If people want to connect with you, learn more, want to talk more with you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
So easy is yourbizrules.com/soar hire. So we have a special page just for you guys. Right now, First This and That, as we're recording, has been published, so that book information, but that's going to be where Scaling Rich will be as well. So even if you take advantage of, we've got like a book guide for First This and That, get on our newsletter list, because that's the best way to know when Scaling Rich is going to come out. But if you're ready to work more and to get busy and get things going, then we can help you there. And there's a way to schedule a call with us.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll put all of that information in the show notes so that you have easy access no matter where you're listening or watching the podcast from. Click in the show notes. We'll have all of Leslie's information in there. You can click on it, contact her, learn more, ask questions. And if you're ready for change, if you're ready to maybe be open to some different or better ways of doing things, I highly recommend working with her. She's really sharp and just a good person. That's it for today's show, everybody. I want to invite you back next time. We've got another great edition for you. Next time we get together, we're going to be learning how to break through barriers. So we learned a little bit about that today. Next time we come together, breaking through barriers in your business, leveraging technology and building resilient teams specifically. You won't want to miss that. It's going to be a great show. That's it. Hope you have a great week, everybody.